Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Welcome to this episode of the Ignited podcast. My name is Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we're here today to really start a conversation about how you treat your body. We're going to see that for us, at least, that goes far beyond just what we normally think of, like exercise and, what you eat, things of that nature. And today we're going to have an interview with Dr. Frank Lipman, who is literally one of the pioneers of this idea that there is a way to combine Eastern and Western medicine in a way that really helps create a better overall sense of well-being. I know you have a quote that you really like from Dr. Lipman, something that really kind of spoke to you. So if you want to share that.
Yeah, our friends over at Mind Body Green just posted a quote from him. He was at Revitalize with us, and that's where we recorded this podcast.
Yep.
And he says, a real holistic perspective is how you think, move, believe, treat the planet and your community, not just being vegan or paleo. And I think that's so profound because it really is taking in East meets West. It's taking in holistic, mental, emotional, spiritual, soulful connectivity as an entire perspective instead of just how you fit into a box.
Yeah, and I think, especially given everything we talked to him about, that's so relevant because when we talked to him, his way into this actually came out of just not really liking the way he was working with clients when he was a physician. He moved from South Africa. He really didn't like this kind of Western medicine thing that he had seen in the US. And he was looking for another way, and he just kind of started his own exploration. He was trying acupuncture and all these other things and ended up working in those because he really at first more liked the interaction he had with the patients and then was getting better outcomes. And so right from the beginning for him, this was about how you interact, right? We talk about relationships all the time, not just about what his patients put in their body or what they did, but how he relates to them. And so there was this relationship that he had with the people he worked with.
Right.
And if he felt like it was too much of, hey, tell me what's wrong and I'll tell you how to fix it, and it wasn't collaborative, he felt like he couldn't really do the work that he wanted to do. And you really see that in him when you talk to him.
I love his perspective. I think it's really refreshing, and he's obviously been doing this for so long, and he just has still such a fresh perspective, because I think there's so many people out there that are just so dogmatic in what to eat, how to do it, how to exercise. And it's honestly like pretty exhausting for me being in this field for over 10 years now. It's exhausting, these like dogmatic approaches to what to eat, how to eat when everyone's bodies are different, how to move. And Dr. Lipman echoed that. And I really am excited for this.
Yeah, he really, for me, there were so many things that stuck out for me in the conversation with him. First of all, his ability and desire and wherewithal to not start going the way everybody else was going just because it wasn't really popular to do what he was doing, right? Like no Western physician in New York was doing acupuncture in the mid 80s when he was trying to bring that into the sphere of the people that he was working with.
Exactly.
It was this idea of you go to medical school, you learn what works, and then you do that to your patients. And that really turned him off. And instead of just either quitting medicine or just going along with what everybody else did, he developed his own way to do it. And so I remember when we talked to him, quite a bit of the experience for me was about really trying to understand, how do you do that? How do you because we're like that, but it's hard sometimes to see how that happens in you. How do you stick in your head with the idea that no, even though everybody else is doubting me or looking down at what I'm doing, trying to really connect to what's inside and saying, I believe in this.
And also just going on your own path and listening to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you know what have your secrets been? I mean, I know you have kind of been doing this thing for 10 years, getting information and listening to what other people are doing, but developing your own.
Right. I mean, I think just like I tell my clients, it's really important to shut out the world. You can read all the books you want to, become really educated, listen to people that are pioneers in their field, like Dr. Lipman, like you in addiction world, like me in the superfood world, and then shut it all out and tune in to your intuition and really figure out what is working for you. What type of workouts actually give you results? What kind of workouts actually leave you feeling really good instead of drained? What kind of foods give you energy instead of deplete you, et cetera, et cetera. Tuning into yourself and really finding your own innate wisdom and following that instead of what everyone's telling you what to do.
Don't you find like one of the hardest things is people aren't really attuned to what they feel and think? I mean, that's one of people's biggest issue is they don't really pay attention to how they feel on a regular basis, day to day, minute to minute, or they've gotten so used to feeling shitty that they kind of just take that as the standard.
Yeah, I think in our world of wellness and most of the people that are listening to this, I think that they choose to follow what is current. So it might be trends in how to move your body, the classes at the gym. All of these things are there for options. They're all there to try out, but that doesn't mean you follow the trends just because that's what's new and that's what's cool and that's what's being talked about on Instagram.
But like you said, that's what so many people do. So if you're constantly tuning into yourself, I feel like there can also just be this thing of constantly trying to improve. Like you reach this point where you're actually really comfortable. Let's say you found what's comfortable to eat. You found your exercise regimen. Like all that stuff is tuned in. Sometimes you can have this desire to just keep tuning it in better and better. And that can just mess with the program at some point. Like at some point you might throw away things that have been working for you for years or decades. Like you said, because there's a new thing.
Yeah, that's what fads and trends do. They pick you up and swoop you in, and they are almost intoxicating because it's like what everyone's doing, what magazines are talking about. Magazines need the next coolest thing, the newest thing, not necessarily even the coolest thing. They want things that are different, weird, things that have never been talked about before. They want to be fresh and new. So the media is talking about these things, not because it's what you should be doing, but because it's new.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, and
then as consumers, we consume it. And then we do it.
But it's funny, if you look at if we're going to talk about nutrition right now, right, there's so many different movements that are so different in how they approach this. Like the whole paleo thing is actually about evolutionarily, we're supposed to be like this. Let's go back to eating what we ate 50,000 years ago, because that's what we're programmed to do. Then there's things like ketosis, where you take ketones, like you eat very isolated compounds that are supposed to throw your body and hack it into this like fat eating state so you can lose fat. And then there's like the whole 30 movement and that whole thing where you just essentially reduce processed foods. It's not quite as hard as paleo, but it is
paleo, but it's for 30 days. It's actually more extreme than paleo because you can't have certain things that you can have when you're paleo.
So
then there's raw vegan, then there's vegan, and that's the opposite end where you do, with vegans, they live off grains, they live off sugar. It's always putting something in a box and creating rules and being dogmatic so that someone feels safer.
Yeah.
But you know the answers. So try those diets. That's what I always say. Try them. Try being paleo for 30 days. Do Whole30. Get a taste for it. See how you feel. I gain weight when I eat paleo. Instantly. Like I've gained 5 pounds.
In a bad way?
In a bad way. Like okay. I hold on all of that protein. My body doesn't really know what to do with it. I don't feel good when I have that much protein in my body. So it's interesting. And for someone like your mom, who it's more in her nature and more in probably her blood type and...
Oh my God, my mom's always, since I was a kid, my mom would eat like a piece of toast with just strips of butter on it.
Well, that's good healthy fats, but she also she loves eating meat. And she can just eat meat all day long. She's always told me, like, I just love eating meat. I would just eat it.
You know what's interesting about that, though? So it's funny, right? My mom did that even throughout the whole time where you weren't supposed to have butter. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to have margarine. And I remember my mom always saying to me, like, I don't know, something about that margarine shit scares the crap out of me. And then 30 years later, it comes out, all those really dangerous, essentially man-created fats that your body doesn't know what the hell to do with.
Exactly.
So
Listen to your body, listen to your instincts. And the more, that's how intuition works. The more that you follow the path of your intuition. I mean, you and I talk about in our relationship intuition all the time. Our therapist will say, oh, a D can't read your mind. Like, I don't want him to read my mind. I want him to be intuitive about what his wife needs because he's known me for 13 years. How do you get better at following your intuition if you never follow it? You need a chance. You have to start listening in. When I eat that apple, I feel bloated. Every time I eat apples, I feel bloated.
But you're asking people to really isolate specific things. Like, I eat 30 different things in a day, let's say. How do you start paying attention to how each one of those things makes you feel?
I mean, if you were my client, I would say keep a food journal for 3 days. And it is isolated. You do start to pay more close attention. But it ends up being very similar trends. It's not...
You see the same thing in different people.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, to me, in the context of Dr. Lipman, what is interesting, you're talking about follow your intuition, and he followed his intuition for like 25 years. He was talking to us in the interview. Everybody will hear this in a minute, but about how it's weird for him to see, the same, he's doing the same shit. He's doing the exact same stuff he was doing 25 years ago. 25 years ago, people were calling him crazy and a quack.
And now it is trendy to get acupuncture. Everyone you know is getting acupuncture.
Getting acupuncture, trying to eat more whole, not processed foods, understanding this idea that they're kind of different, not elements, but different tendencies for different bodies to respond to different things, that there doesn't necessarily have to be a specific diet that is good to everybody.
There's not a one size fits all.
I know.
We all really want there to be, but there's not.
In everything, right? It's so funny. People, you were mentioning relationships. People ask us this about all the time. Like, what's the secret to a good relationship? I'm like,
there's 12,000.
Sorry, there isn't a single one. There's not like, we can't tell you do this every day and that will be what you need. So when we started with Dr. Lipman, I was really thinking that this whole episode was going to be about how do you treat your body and what do you put in it and all that kind of stuff. I really feel like the thing I got the most out of his was this thing we're talking about. What's your relationship to authority like? And how do you parse out what is my internal gut telling me, like literally and figuratively, right? What do I feel is the right thing to do here versus what is everybody else saying? And how do you resolve those two things and stay true to yourself and create a life, an existence, a job, a relationship that you're happy with? And, if Dr. Lipman is not an example of only one thing, but he's definitely an example of the fact that if you follow that path, oftentimes you'll find that eventually the road ends up leading to where you're walking anyway. And
just to listen to
you don't get swayed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So with that, here's Dr. Lipman. Enjoy the interview.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, we're here with Dr. Frank Lipman at Revitalize in Tucson. I met Dr. Lipman last year when I came to Revitalize for the first time. And, it's sort of hard I'm going to try to quickly summarize who you are because you've been doing this work for so long now that you're one of the, people we can talk about this for 45 minutes, but you're really one of the pioneers of this idea of integrative medicine. The idea of not putting away the East, not putting away the West, but finding a way to combine the two. And I come from a family of doctors. So the Western component has been drilled into my head for a long time. Obviously,
My
married.
mom, and my mom's a holistic nurse practitioner, and it's holistic.
Well, the nurses have always been ahead of the game, actually.
Interesting. Okay, I'd love to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And you do so many things, right? You're one of the directors of the 1111 Wellness Center in New York City, but you also have been teaching this for a really, really long time. And as far as I know, one of the only programs in the country that really teaches integrative nutrition and medicine. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. I'm one of the teachers at IIN, the Integrative School of Nutrition. I don't know if that's the only school, but they've definitely made the most headway into the culture. They train a lot of people. So but there's a lot of stuff going on now. I mean, 10 years ago even, there wasn't much. Now, more and more people are learning, teaching. It's exciting.
Yeah.
From being a quack for so many years, now become a guru, and I haven't really changed much of what I'm saying. And as you say, a lot of my thinking was, I started as a Western doctor, then I was disillusioned, so I started studying Chinese medicine.
What made you disillusioned?
I trained in South Africa, and in South Africa, you got trained, you had to take a good history, you had to spend time talking to people. They always used to say 80% of your diagnosis is going to come from the patient's story. So you really learn to take a good history and examine people properly. And when I came to the States and I had to do a residency to get a green card, and so I took a job in the South Bronx, there was you weren't really taught to take a history. It was about what the blood results showed, and x-rays and EKGs. Then you had to go quickly study for the next morning to present to the professor. There was nothing about relationships, and I know you're all about relationships. So there was the relationship aspect of Western medicine wasn't there, and that's that was the part that I loved. So I thought,
practicing medicine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
great.
So I thought, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. And I went back to my wife. I said, I can't be a doctor here. And there happened to be an acupuncture clinic. This is 1984. Happened to be an acupuncture clinic before you guys were born. Now.
I know.
No. I was born in 1976. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
There happened to be an acupuncture detox clinic in the South Bronx. They were doing acupuncture for heroin addicts and crack addicts, because at that time, the South Bronx was a wasteland. It was a crack area. So I'd heard about the clinic, and I went over a couple of blocks. It was attached to the hospital, but not part of it. And I went to see what was going on. And long story short, it's too long to tell the story, but I fell in love with acupuncture, and I started studying Chinese medicine while I was doing my residency. So I continued my residency, and I continued going to the acupuncture clinic. So I started learning Chinese medicine while I was doing my internal medicine.
And this is, you pointed this out earlier, but this is the days where, the vast majority of Western physicians would have looked at acupuncture as maybe something akin to quackery.
They did. It was something I didn't really talk about, because, even when I did it, in my final year, they asked me to be chief resident, and I said yes if I can spend time in the psychiatry department, which was attached, the acupuncture clinic was attached to psychiatry. And I was chief medical resident, and I had to organize grand rounds. And towards the end, I thought, I'm going to do a grand round on acupuncture. I thought, they all like me, they respect me, let's turn them on to acupuncture. And the response wasn't that great.
Yeah.
They were all very nice. They all came up to me and they said, are you crazy? What are you doing? This is nonsense. You're going to be ostracized. You're such a good doctor. What are you doing? But I knew, when you know something.
Yeah. Well, and this is what I love about this, right? And you already mentioned kind of relationship. And I always tell Sophie before we do the interviews, I don't really want to think of what kind of relationship we're going to start unraveling. Right. Because even aside from the component of relationship to wellness and food, which is the obvious one with you, I'm hearing a lot of other things. Your relationship to your patients. What do my patients need? What have they gone through?
It's all about relationships. It's relationships with your patients. It's relationships, definitely relationships with your patients. I mean, the Dalai Lama says the three most important aspects of healing are the belief system of the patient, the belief system of the practitioner, and the karma between the two, the relationship between the two. So I think relationships are key, but then there's the relationship to the environment, which we've forgotten about, and because of that, we can go on for hours about the ecosystem and our inner ecosystem, the relationship with our body and with our own ecosystems within us, the relationships with our microbiome.
Sure.
And the microbiome is all about relationships, the bacteria, how the bacteria relate to other bacteria and parasites and fungi and you, the host. It's all about relationships. So it's, we have a culture where we think of us against them or bad guys you got to kill. It's all about it's about symbiosis and how do you work in relationship with the environment, in community, with your body. It's all about relationships.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, as Sophie pointed out, she grew up in a household where all these things that were without a doubt outside of that frame were considered quackery or sort of, old wives' tales and thinking were the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what's happened is a lot of what I do is all old wives' tales. I'm using a lot of the wisdom from many different cultures, our grandmothers, whether it's American Indian, reverence for nature, Chinese medicine's understanding of we as humans are the microcosms of the macrocosm, which is a universe. They all say the same thing, when my grandmother, when we used to get sick, used to give us chicken soup, which is basically bone broth.
Yep.
I can go on and on. All cultures, fermented foods. A lot of what I do today is common sense from old traditions.
Yeah.
Which we have either ignored or thought we better and more civilized, so we don't really take it into account, so we destroy the food, or we alter the food, we alter our environment, we kill bacteria because we think they're bad for us. So, we may have a better understanding of why these things are happening, but a lot of my recommendations are, how to sleep, how to eat, how to move, how to, relax, things that all cultures have had. They had to, that's how they survived.
So this is decades ago, you wanted to quit medicine because you couldn't have the relationship that you wanted with your patients. You didn't feel like you were providing the sort of service you wanted to spend the rest of your life doing.
Right.
Once you made this shift and you started growing in this way, what's your relationship to your patients now?
I think it's key. I can usually tell within 5-10 minutes if a patient's going to get better or not, because if you connect with someone, basically whatever you tell them or whatever you do, I have a joke that I can tell usually, once again, let's make it 80% of the time, if I'm going to give someone acupuncture, who's going to respond or not. So I think the relationship and beliefs and the connection with patients is key to healing.
Trust, you think?
Trust. Yeah, trust. That's all part of it. Yeah, trust, belief, relationship, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, I know, as I get older, I get more and more philosophical. I've always been philosophical, but I think as I get older, I realize how much more, when you're younger, you're like looking for specific things people can do and supplements they can take and this exercise to do that, etc. As I get older and the more I do it, I see that it's a combination of all these things together. It's much more subtle.
But you also have so much more knowledge now.
Yeah,
you started
absolutely.
collecting, right, moment by moment, year by year, you're seeing and connecting dots that you didn't know existed 20 years ago.
Exactly.
And but you need openness for that, right? You need to be willing to say, there are things I don't know here, and I'm going to go find where those are and be exposed to information and be open for integrating that into what I'm doing.
Being open is essential. I think, unfortunately, most doctors are not. we get trained in such a way, we have such an arrogance that our way is the best. Western culture is like that. We think our way is the best. Our food is unfortunately what's happened, all the junk food that we know is crap here. If you go to South Africa now, you go anywhere in the world, they're all embracing that American junk food.
Yeah.
So it's powerful. It's powerful cultural brainwashing, but you got to be open.
Yeah.
And I think partly why I was more open is growing up in South Africa during apartheid, and that it's a rotten system, and that was a system. So it wasn't that difficult for me to question the medical system.
So you knew, this is like totally, I know this is totally off topic for wellness, but maybe not.
So all wellness, yeah.
I had family in South Africa. Some of them still live there right now. And I always wondered, we're going through what we're going through in the U.S. right now, right?
Same thing. It's worse, probably, yeah.
Well, and I wonder, living under apartheid for so long, but you're saying everybody kind of knew the system sucked. Well, what does that do to a person living in something where the entire system is? Yeah,
so crooked? I was lucky. I grew up in a very left-wing household, which was unusual. Okay. My parents were actually part of the Mandela group.
Oh, wow.
So that was unusual because most white families sort of may have known that it was wrong, but were a little bit more accepting. They didn't want to buck the system, especially the Jewish community where I came from. Jewish community was sort of split. There were, as in America, some are more
right-wing,
absolutely,
and accepted, but as in America, the left wing was always, Jews were very prominent in the left wing movement and the ANC, Mandela's movement as well. So it was very interesting. But most whites sort of knew it was wrong, but they lived their lives. They accepted it because they were comfortable.
It gives them power.
They couldn't really change much. I mean, I don't want to judge people too harshly, but you get put in jail maybe if you're too radical, but it's complicated. But the point is, I grew up knowing that the system was wrong. That's why I knew I was going to leave when I could. So it wasn't that much of a jump for me to know that the medical system was wrong either.
I love that. I mean, again, my brain always thinks in these kinds of relationships. So even your relationship to authority,
it's always been anti-authority, always. And I think that,
yeah.
And I think our movement was, I'm not really one of the fathers, I'm probably the second generation. There's more the Andrew Wiles and the Jeff Blands who sort of were just a bit before me. But when I first got into this here in the when I came 84, 88, I started going to American Holistic Medical Association meetings. And there was Andrew Weil and all these older guys, and everyone was smoking pot and doing drugs. They were old hippies. My Chinese medicine teachers, who probably my biggest influence, and my yoga teacher, old hippies.
Yep.
So that generation were very influential. It started as this anti-authoritarian hippie movement, and I sort of definitely was more attracted to that. So it wasn't really that difficult for me, to be quite honest. It was just what I wanted to, what I felt was right and what I wanted to do.
I think also when you grow up in a progressive home, like a left-wing home, like that's how I am. I'm totally anti-authority. And I'm not doing bad things. I just question everything, both as a Jew and as a child in a very left-wing home. That's what you're taught.
Exactly. So it wasn't, it may seem to outside people that I was such a radical, but that just was how it was,
But I think that's how that kind of stuff happens, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of people just assume that because it's the way things are, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
And it's the people who are willing to question, or I'll say,
challenge the norm.
Yeah.
That's how change ends up happening.
Exactly.
And what I'm seeing for you is you're doing this for decades, and in the beginning, what you did was considered quackery or off-label sort of weirdness, even within your respected profession and among your colleagues.
Yep.
And like you said before, you didn't really change much, but the authority on what is okay and what is accepted and what is not changed along the time. But there needs to be, you always talk about kind of like the tip of the spear, right? So you mentioned some people who came in before you, and I'd like to maybe have those names mentioned again, or some of the people that we
Andrew
can
Wiles,
talk
Andrew,
about.
well, I mean, I think my biggest influences were Ephraim Korngold and Harriet Beinfeld. In San Francisco, they wrote an unbelievable book called Between Heaven and Earth, A Guide to Chinese Medicine. They had taken sort of Western psychology and personality perspectives and mixed it with Chinese medicine. They're brilliant, and they were old hippies, extremely influential on me and taught me how to think. They didn't teach me to use X for Z. They taught me how to think. As did I have an Iyengar yoga teacher, Lindsay Clennell. All of these guys are in their 70s. Lindsay was a direct student of Mr. Iyengar, and was also an old hippie documentary maker who just got into yoga for his own well-being and studied with Mr. Iyengar. And he's also an anarchist, different thinker. And he also was very influential on helping me understand the yoga perspective, yoga, but way beyond yoga. So I was lucky to have incredible mentors who became close friends. So we just spent a lot of time together.
That's so important. And it's, I'm sitting here wearing a fuck shame shirt, which,
Right.
you were here when we talked last year. That can be hard to maintain sometimes. It can be hard to be okay playing the role of the tip of the spear, because a lot of people they acquiesce, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're sitting there and you do a grand rounds. For anybody who doesn't know what a grand rounds is, that's sometimes it's once a week, sometimes once a month, but hospitals will have the system where one physician presents.
Exactly.
And it's a moment to shine. It's a moment to show yourself in front of your colleagues. You chose to go there. You chose to go to acupuncture,
Right.
which you might have liked, but you knew other people were looking at a little sideways.
Well, you know what? I was so naive then. I actually thought they would get turned onto it. I was so excited by it because I was seeing it was helping people.
Yeah.
And it was so obvious that Chinese medicine was good for things that Western medicine wasn't helpful for. Because in Western medicine, we're in the hospital and we're treating crisis care, acute heart attacks, broken bones, acute infections, which was wonderful. And in the Chinese medicine clinic, we were treating the problems that we couldn't treat. People couldn't poop and they were tired and they had back pain. So I thought, this is the answer. This is the future. It was so obvious that this was the future that I was so excited to share this with these people because I wasn't even treading on their toes. I was telling them,
here's a solution for all the stuff you haven't been able to deal with.
Well, Exactly.
Yeah. But they didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
People love to stay in their safety nets, their boxes.
So I didn't. That was the first time I was in that position because at that time I thought they would embrace it because it was so obvious. It was just common sense. But
interesting.
Yeah.
But it didn't make you stop.
No.
You were like, I know this works. I get it.
Yeah.
There's this internal sense of self and understanding that I'm on a path, and I recognize that there's something really positive in this. And look now, it was funny, but when I was bringing up to one of our friends, I was bringing up that we're interviewing you, and she goes, he was one of my teachers 15 years ago. And the lessons that she learned 15 years ago in the school were, things that have really changed the way she's addressed food and nutrition for the last 20 years.
Wonderful. I love this next year. You can imagine how rewarding it is for me to see
what's happening. Yeah.
Because your generation has embraced this. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. So that's why I love coming to Revitalize, just to see the excitement. I have a 29-year-old daughter who's getting married in 5 weeks. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And also I have a lot of young patients. I have a lot of young health coaches. It's so exciting to see that this is just the way they think.
Yeah.
It's not even, if I have to see your parents' generation, if I see patients in their 50s and 60s, it's so much harder to work with. You're trying to explain to them, you're trying to sort of bring them around, convince them that maybe drugs aren't the solution to their problems. People in their 20s and 30s and 40s, somewhat, but 20s and 30s for sure, They get it.
We just get it. It's just the way we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, I remember my dad was dealing with a lot of really, really severe back pain, and he had a lot of health issues towards the end of his life. But he found acupuncture, and he was as Western as they come. He was a physician. He was an OBGYN. And he went religiously. I mean, there's this element of once you see it done and see it work, and I think that goes back to that belief that you were talking about, it shifts the way you look at the world. Because if it works on me, then it must also work on some other people. And if it works on some other people, then it's a worthwhile endeavor and something. Right. And it's like, I think that's why it takes so long, is it's almost like you got to persuade all these branches. Like you get one person and then a branch grows out of that of people who are now persuaded. And now you get to the point where we're surrounded by 250 people, where I would assume you're right. There's probably not a single person here who hears acupuncture and goes, "Oh my God, that's just bullshit." Don't.
Right, and also I think the internet, everyone with their big followings, so the word is spreading so much more easily now. So it's fantastic. I love
really
it.
great.
I mean, it's very exciting for me.
Can you tell us more about the new health rules?
Well, I have a new book coming out, which you guys are going to help me in April.
Absolutely.
Called How to Be Well.
How to be well.
It's all about, it's a real how-to book. Like you have a how to go camping or how to whatever. It's how to be well. It's like a real
like a workbook, almost like a guide.
It's exactly. It's a workbook.
That's great.
And like there's 6 parts, and it's an illustrated book. I'll show you. I have some. It's the idea came from the new health rules, where we try to make it beautiful and very short and snappy, so people can relate to it, because people don't read long books anymore. That's not how we get information now.
We're a very ADD culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can talk about that too. But so the new health rules just was an opening. The idea was to take that concept and then give people. They don't really want to know why they have to do it. How do I do it? How do I make nut milk?
Exactly.
How do I get off gluten? How do I use music to help me heal? How do I start cooking? How do I make bone broth?
I love that a guy who's been doing this for 25, 30 years wrote a book called The New Health Rules. It's like almost like you had to overcome at some point the notion of going, there's nothing new about this. But
and I hate rules, so
totally.
So that was
that's funny.
Well, I think the new health rules, to me, when I hear that, I just think there are no rules really. Like to me, it's just it's all intuition. And when I work with clients one-on-one, but I only work with them for 3 sessions. That's my top. Right. Because if they, like you said, within that first few minutes, you can tell if acupuncture is going to work. Within the first phone call, I can tell if they're going to take those lessons and start to integrate them. And
well, you're going to love How to Be Well. It's so fucking good.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well,
It's written. It's actually, the idea was from the new health rules, but because I work with health coaches closely now, all of them came from IIN, and they help my patients implement what I suggest, and they guide and support them, and that's what's missing as well in Western medicine. So it's all very well, which is what I did for many years. You would come in to see me, and I'd say, okay, stop eating gluten, stop eating dairy, stop eating sugar, start meditating, you got to sleep better. Bye. I'll see you in a month.
Sure. Who knows what happens during that month? Exactly.
Now I have a health coach who sits down with them afterwards. This is how you're going to do it. Here's the diet.
Here's the plan.
These are the alternatives when you don't, here's an app if you want to start meditating. Here's where you can go learn to meditate. Here's some restaurants. If you go to restaurants, this is the way you should order. So we have a system now, which, once I started doing that, patients did so much better. So the book sort of stems out of everything I really do. Sort of is what I've been learning over the last couple of years.
I think people also just want to feel supported.
Yeah,
and it's kind of scary out there.
Yeah,
like there's so much information with the internet. There's so much information with all these health coaches and people and doctors, and everyone's saying something slightly different. And I mean, really what I always say is to find your own intuition and your own voice and your own rules and see what works for you. But it's nice to be guided, and it's nice to have your hand held.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's nice to have somebody who has knowledge and yet can acknowledge yours is going to be a variation on this. I'll guide. and I'll give you kind of the boundaries of what it is we're talking about, and then we're going to find the thing that specifically fits for you.
Well,
and you're going to know it.
And what I've done is we've taken a mandala. Do you know the mandalas?
Yes.
Sure.
And we have you in the middle, because it's you have to. It's, all these different entry points. So they're the 6 circles that we talked about: how to eat, how to move, how to sleep, how to unwind, how to protect, how to connect. Those are the circles around you in the center, because you have to take charge of your own health. Where you enter is almost irrelevant. Some people can enter by going to walk on the beach.
Totally.
Other people will enter by, learning to meditate with Headspace.
Sure.
Other people will enter by sitting with their families to eat. So there are different ways you can enter, but ultimately you at the center. So it's
beautiful.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
the philosophy of the book.
So this is the Ignited podcast, and we talked about a lot of things that get you excited. But if you had to pick something that literally gets you ignited, something that just drives you, your passion, and just gets you elevated, what would that be?
Well, I'm so excited now by what excites me is different. What's going to excite other people. For me, the excitement to see how this movement has grown, and when I come to a place like this, because I'm probably the oldest or one of the oldest, to see this new generation, because this is sort of new for me to see this. When we came last year, me and my wife said, God, I can't believe how young everyone is. So for me to see this is so exciting, because we're talking about this is how it changes, because you're going to treat your kids differently. Everything's going to change. It's a
revolution.
Exactly.
It's a wellness revolution.
And it's happened.
It's happened.
You can't stop it now.
No.
So that's exciting to me. I think what I have found, if you're looking for something, how do you turn people on? That's always been my struggle. How do you get people turned on to health and wellness? Because for some people, for a lot of people, it's very difficult. And what I've learned is people have to have a subjective experience of feeling better or vitality to keep them hooked.
Absolutely.
You can't just tell them, you can't just give them a book and say you're going to feel better. They have to do something that's going to make them feel better. That's why yoga, I think, is so powerful. Meditation can do that. Supplements take time. Diet can take time. Part of why I developed my detox was because people feel so much better after 2 weeks that you get them hooked. Because it took me a while to work out how, talk about relationships. How do you turn people on to health and wellness if they're not really, don't know, or they don't feel good? It's hard to convince someone you're going to feel good if you start walking or if you do X, Y. It's very hard. But if people have a subjective sensation of that vitality, then you don't have to tell them anymore.
Absolutely.
When I do my work with people on the more mental health part of this, it's the same sort of question, right? How do you take somebody who's hopeless, feels like they're failures, like they're never going to be anything, and get them to start changing pretty common habits that you can pretty much guarantee that if they start changing those things, that'll get better. And one of the things that I found, I don't know if this can help in your practice, but one of the things that I found initially is to have them visualize, maybe sometimes and write, what their life is going to look like if those problems aren't there anymore. Because the initial experience of, God, the relief that you get just from thinking of what life would be like the other way can be that impetus to go, okay, if that's what it's going to feel like to lose my weight or to not have the inflammation or whatever, get it to me. And then they get really excited because it's hard to get them excited about an exercise. Like, okay, go home and do this. They look at you like you're crazy. How's writing about what I want my intimacy and my relationship to look like going to help my life? But if you have them just imagine you're with your partner and you have the kind of relationship you want. They already take themselves to the end goal. Right. And now it's about connecting the dots of how do you get from where you are right now to that imagined space.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. To me, that's key. People have to see the light, experience the light. No, otherwise, it's very difficult to get people to change habits.
Change, exactly.
And ultimately, this is about, changing your habits, changing your lifestyle.
Which changes your entire existence.
Exactly.
Once you change that lifestyle and you change what you eat and you change the way you feel and you change the way you feel about yourself and other people and your relationships, your entire world, your entire reality shifts and you have the most beautiful life.
Absolutely. And easier for your kids.
Yeah.
You know, less...
We see it. We see it with our kids. People are like, what do you do with them? I'm like, I feed them whole real foods. They sleep 12 hours a night. They do yoga. And all they do is talk about love and hear love and watch us love. That's it. It's a really simple, you know, prescription.
They have to see it and see it with you. I mean, you know, if there's friction with the parents, obviously the kids are going to pick it up.
Any negativity they're exposed to.
And if there is friction, to be more transparent about it. I mean, I grew up in an environment where everything was behind closed doors. You never knew there was a problem until it blew up and somebody's screaming and throwing stuff.
That's so stressful for a child.
Yeah, very stressful.
And it's disconcerting because of safety. You don't. The child doesn't feel safe. So people will say, "Oh, you know, mommy and daddy fight once in a while. It's okay. We get together and we group hug."
We're feeling frustrated right now. We're going to take some time to ourselves.
So all these things affect healing.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Last question.
Yeah.
What do you do for yourself to kind of wind down, or a self-care ritual that you do that works for you? Like for me, it's a bath at the end of a long day. I need to do that to kind of get rid of all the energy that I pick up throughout the day.
Right. I'm bad at the end of the day.
Okay.
Well, anytime, self-care.
I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is meditate for 20 minutes.
Boom.
Any specific method or?
Well, interestingly enough, we just recently, I've always done mindfulness, well, not always, on and off for many years. And then my writer for my new book hooked me up with someone who teaches meditation, a Vedic meditation, mantra type, who is going to be in New York. He teaches in New York and London, and he offered to come teach my office. He wanted to come teach me, and then he came and taught the office, and which was wonderful because 10 of us, he came and spent 5 days for 2 hours a day, 4 days for 2 hours a day, 7 to 9 in the morning, teaching us. And since then I've been doing my Vedic meditation, which I actually found so easy.
So that's more mantra based?
Yeah. I mean, I still do it all. I had 2 ways of meditating before. One was just mindfulness, feeling my body. And then I'd gotten taught by an old yogi about hearing these sounds in your head and the hum and getting that hum to go through your body. So now I do that, but then I go back to my mantra. So I go much deeper. It's really very easy. It's made my meditation so much easy. So I start with that every morning, and then I have a shake, a smoothie with tons of fat, almond butter, coconut oil, avocado, chocolate whey, coconut milk, chia seeds. What else do we put in there?
Soon to be philosophy superfood powder.
I have to give you some of my superfood powders as a gift.
Okay, and so that's
cool.
Sort of my morning.
Meditation and a smoothie.
Yeah, my meditation and my fat-filled smoothie.
That's how I am. Trader Joe's has coconut meat now, frozen coconut meat.
Oh, really? At Trader Joe's?
Yeah. We got like 4 bags last time we went.
Okay, I don't think it's got to New York yet, but it will get there.
It will.
Yeah. So
Trader Joe's can feel free to sponsor this podcast episode.
So yeah, and then I see patients. I don't work on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so then I go for a ride. I ride
your bicycle.
I ride, in the woods. So
nice.
So that's sort of my routine, and then I come home and I have an infrared sauna. So when I'm not seeing patients, I have a real routine.
So important. Important to find your routine, no matter what it is. The reason we like asking everybody is, what are successful people doing to take care of themselves?
Well, what happens as you get older, you'll notice you don't have the leeway to mess around much.
Yeah.
You got to just be stricter.
I already don't feel, I'm 33 and I don't feel like I have the leeway. If I go 2 days without working out, that third day, it is hard to get back into it. my body is just, it craves movement every day, even if it's a long walk with my dog.
Yeah.
It craves good food. If I eat 2 or 3 days badly, if we're on vacation,
You feel
I feel it
Good.
everywhere.
Well, it's good. It's good to have that feedback.
That awareness.
Sophie's
It's instant.
very attuned to that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, but that's important, I think. And that's what keeps people going. That's what.
Absolutely.
I love ice cream. I mean, I love
Totally.
ice
Yeah, and I can
cream.
try and trick myself. Oh, it's fine. I can eat pizza. What's the big deal? I won't get fat. But I feel terrible.
Yeah.
And everything's inflamed, and I can't put my rings on, and I can't sleep, and it all feeds into each other.
Which is good. So that's what happens.
Thank you, body. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Aw, yay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you.
An honor.
Love your work. Excited to see this movement happen. Now, after this conversation, I'm excited for you, who's been working so long to get this going, and now here it is. We're here.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's great. And thank you guys for spreading the word.
Absolutely.
It's
Pleasure.
fantastic. I love it.
Oh,
Thank you
yeah.
so
It
much.
is great.
When's your book coming out?
In April. But I'll send you. It's
All right. So
when
when
it
this
comes out, then you'll be promoting it. I'm sure.
Of
Absolutely.
course.
It's really good.
All right. Cool. Look for Dr. Lipman's new book.
Okay.
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.